All right, we're there. Hey, everybody, welcome back. It is Thursday afternoon, so it's time for another Astro Bookshelf, Astro Coffee discussion with Dr. Brian Keating. My name's Tony Darnell from deepastronomy.everything, and we are here to talk about, I think we're here to talk about exponential growth, but I'm not entirely sure. So let me go ahead and pull up my guest, Dr. Brian Keating, who's in his fancy space station background. Hey, Brian, how's it going?
It's going great, Tony. It's great to see you and talk with all the fans out in the internet.
That's right. So if you're new to this stream that we're doing on Thursdays, then let me just introduce Dr. Brian Keating. He has his own channel on YouTube, Dr. Brian Keating, which if you do not subscribe to it, you must. The link is in the description box below. And the reason is he really does some outstanding content with respect to interviews from authors in the fields of science. And he's had some amazing guests so far. And the purpose of this hangout is to introduce you to not only Brian, but also his channel and these interviews, which I'm a little bit confused, Brian. Are they part of your YouTube channel, or is this really as part of the podcast that you're doing, which you should also introduce?
Yeah, well, basically, I've decided to take anything that I turn into a YouTube video, turn it into a podcast, or vice versa. Originally, we were only doing audio interviews for the Arthur C. Clarke Center's Into the Impossible podcast, and then I realized we might as well do video interviews as well, and got some help from some talented people here in San Diego to add in some footage, some B-roll, as they say in the field, and images and so forth. And so we make it kind of an interactive affair where we provide a lot of resources and include things such as show notes and links and so forth. So people can get access to all that. My website, you sign up for my newsletter, you'll get access to the show notes. And my website's briankeating.com. And the YouTube channel is Dr. Brian Keating. And so far, yeah, we've had on, I think I've read 20 books in the last 12 weeks. I'm starting to get a little cross-eyed.
Well, that's part and parcel of the job, though. I love that part of it because you get to read some really cool books. So tell us a little bit about today. What's the topic for today? And while you're talking, I'm going to be doing some behind the scenes button pushing to get the clip up that you sent me.
Yeah, please do. Okay. So one of the things that I'm really, really pleased to have access to here in San Diego as the co-director of the Arthur C. Clarke Center for Human Imagination is our board members. And we have some outstanding board members that advise us, including none other than Dr. Peter Diamandis, famous futurist, thinker, university chancellor, founder, founding CEO, director of the X Prize organization, advisor to companies from SpaceX, Singularity University, etc. And this phenomenal opportunity that I have, I like to take advantage of. So I wanted to connect to Peter, especially on the occasion of his most recent book called "The Future is Faster Than You Think," and how it's really the third and final in a series of books that began in 2012 with the release of a book called Abundance, led to a book called Bold, and now is part of a book called The Future is Faster Than You Think. And what's so interesting about Peter is that he's kind of the most pessimistic optimist or the most optimistic pessimist I've ever met. And he's simply a brilliant intellect with the benefit of having advised companies and so forth on how to really make the future happen. Everything from human longevity to university, the future of universities, which maybe we can talk about, to asteroid mining and beyond. It's just, it's so much fun. And he also has the distinction of being Stephen Hawking's flight surgeon for the first and only zero gravity exploration that Stephen Hawking ever took.
I remember that. Okay. Yeah. Well, shall I just show the clip now, or do you want to do
why don't we do that? Yeah, this is about Sir Arthur C. Clarke and how he met Sir Arthur C. Clarke, I believe.
All right, here we go.
This is really special.
Your recollections of Arthur C. Clarke. You mentioned that you met him on at least one occasion. Can you tell us a little bit about what you remember about him?
I met him in 1982 I was a college student. I was at MIT at the time, and I went to the United Nations conference on the peaceful uses of outer space, and he was giving a talk. And I was there with two other colleagues, Bob Richards and Todd Hawley. Todd since passed away. And we were there representing Students for Exploration and Development of Space, SEDS. And it was we were there as the guest of David C. Webb, one of our advisors. And we ended up befriending Arthur. And a long story on how that happened, but we're having dinner with him. And we, over dinner, were telling him about SEDS and our goals and our missions and all of that. And he was telling us about the stories of post-World War II, his working with German and Russian scientists and what the world was like, and ended up giving him the moniker Uncle Arthur. And he agreed to become an advisor to SEDS. And he then went from becoming an advisor to SEDS to becoming the chancellor of the International Space University. And I would meet him every time he would come to New York to focus on his next book. So I was there when 2010 was being filmed. And then I went twice to Sri Lanka to meet him in Colombo. And he was just an amazing supporter of our work. And he had such a deep British voice. He'd go, "Hello, Peter." Yeah, I can't do it, but it was just amazing to get to know him.
All right, that's
your recollections.
That's really awesome. So so I never got to meet Arthur Clarke, but I always wanted to, and I certainly love the books. All the books he's written, from all of it. So that was a great story.
Yeah, I have to say the title of my podcast is the Into the Impossible podcast. And that really derives from one of Sir Arthur C. Clarke's famous 3 laws. The first one being any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The second one being for every expert, there's an equal and opposite expert.
I did. That one I've never heard.
Yeah, it's so true. He's got like 5 or 6 of them. One of them is if an elderly, distinguished scientist tells you that something is possible, he or she is most likely correct. If they tell you something is impossible, he or she is most certainly wrong. But his third law is the only way to find out what is possible is to venture a little bit beyond into the impossible. So hence the name of our podcast. And it really explores these connections between society, humanity's greatest minds, and how they do what they do by overcoming things that once seemed impossible to them. And Peter is one of these people.
What seemed impossible to him?
So I think, if I had to guess with Peter, the discussion that we had, really, I would say nothing seems impossible. Maybe living to like 1,000 is impossible, but actually achieving, the following things, being an MD, but not actually practicing as a doctor. Nevertheless, he received his MD, went to MIT. He immediately went into thinking about ways that what he calls these exponential technologies could revolutionize humanity and perhaps give us a chance at, if not true immortality, at least the extension of life on Earth, the betterment of life on Earth, and essentially achieving immortality through his good works. And I think it's incredibly commendable what he does. He's really a uniquely, as I said, super positive, kind of pessimist, or super, negative optimist.
Well, what you mean in terms of our future? He's an optimist in terms of humanity's future and technological futures, things like that?
So he has the so-called 6 Ds, which he claims are these disruptive things that are going to lead to an exponential growth in the future. And these are, the future will be digitized. Exponential curves are deceptive because they outpace linear growth only after some period of time. At first, linear growth is, supersedes exponential growth until that boom hockey stick point takes over. We're all, unfortunately, more familiar with exponential growth curves than we ever were before, thanks in some small part to this pandemic that we're still dealing with. He also talks about how things can be dematerialized and put, instead of dealing with photographs and Kodak film, you have Instagram, and why that scaled so much faster, even though Kodak was one of the original pioneers, as you know, of CCD camera photography. They never let go of the materialized world that they were inhabiting for 70, 80 years beforehand. And the other thing is, his being disruptive and being, a pure optimist. I don't think those are commensurate traits. In other words, you can't say everything is great and the status quo is great and say, I want to disrupt it, right? I mean, imagine if, your wife says, well, our marriage is great, but I'm going to disrupt it. Like, I would be pretty nervous. I know she probably sometimes wants to do that, my wife. But the point being, he sees life as it is, as Ted Kennedy is rumored to have said, and dreams what could be made different to achieve a dream of the future that he especially wants. He's a child of the rocket age, of the space age, of the atomic age. And when I say he's pessimistic, it's pessimistic towards the established institutions. Let's take education. He's very pessimistic about the state of education, in contradistinction to my previous guest, also at MIT, David Kaiser, who's pretty optimistic that things will continue status quo with some old sage on a stage scraping one piece of rock on another piece of rock, chalk on a chalkboard. I kind of in between the two of them. So Peter is discussing ways that in the interview that we had, that things like 5G technology is going to revolutionize how we educate people, augmented reality, virtual reality. On the other hand, he also thinks things like cities and transportation are going to be revolutionized. And I wonder, after COVID, and I asked him about this, so you should watch it, but, how did COVID, if at all, change his opinions that were so positive and glowing about things like living in big cities and, being in mass transportation and so forth. So you'll have to listen to the interview to find out.
Did you discover when you were talking to him any similarities between his ideas and proclivities and Ray Kurzweil?
He's very close with Kurzweil. Obviously, the name Singularity University is derived from Kurzweil's prediction, somewhat that the singularity is coming. I didn't speak so much about that. I want to focus on his book with Stephen Kotler, "The Future is Faster Than You Think." We actually did a giveaway, so anybody out there, if you want to get a copy of his book next time or going back in time, sign up for my mailing list because you'll be notified. I give away books by these authors. Today, I'm starting the process of creating a giveaway for my most recent guest, Professor Stefan Alexander. Hopefully we'll talk about him in a couple of weeks on this show. Mm-hmm. So, to subscribe and join in the fun to get notified about these things, because I really want to leverage these amazing intellects that are coming on my show. On Monday, I've got a Nobel Prize winner coming on the show, Adam Rees.
Yep, he's a good guy.
Yeah, so it's going to be, and just to engage with them, it's such a rare opportunity. I want my audience to ask me questions to ask them. So join the mailing list, stay in touch. So some of the things that he talks about, I think he's deeply influenced by Ray, but I wouldn't say that they, are 100% in lockstep. I think of Ray as kind of the Steve Jobs kind of visionary, and I see Peter as also a visionary, but he's in the trenches doing, I'm not saying anything negative about Ray, but Peter's founding universities on the board of 7 or 8 different corporations dedicated to human longevity, body improvement, and then space exploration, and with the asteroid mining project that he's involved in. And he's got about 6 or 7 different companies. I don't know how he sleeps. He's also got young twins at home, or not super young, but he's got twin boys, right. And he's really just a force of nature. He has a thriving online following. He does courses basically on LinkedIn, and you should follow him all around the internet. And it's he's just a modern day kind of Nostradamus, but a lot of his predictions are very potentially impactful for how we live day to day, as well as for society as a whole.
Well, I don't share the optimism of a lot of these guys. I think that I read, Kurzweil's book, and I came away thinking, wow, this is really great, but this is no way close to happening. And in some instances, this idea of exponential growth, I think we're not getting the full picture of what is behind this, because you use the pandemic as an example. That we actually did not experience exponential growth in that. We were able to blunt that curve quite a bit by our behaviors a little bit, but it never really achieved exponential growth, because by now we'd all have it. That's how fast exponential growth occurs. And so I just want to be a little, there are other things, and in Kurzweil's book, and presumably in Peter's book, there is this sense of, once we're on this curve, boy, all bets are off, and we're in the stars in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah.
Because everything is happening that fast. And
that's a very good point. And one thing I brought up with him, just because I'm always respectful to my guests, because I don't think I can get more guests in the future if I'm not respectful. But I always challenge them a little bit. Look, I said to Peter, and I've said this to other guests, if you look at, say, the predictions for, say, quantum computing, or these very, or Moore's law, I mean, that's the foundation of exponential growth, that things will take off exponentially. Now, if you look at the actual number of transistors, yes, that's held true,
yes.
and the cost has come down. But in terms of the actual throughput on a high throughput or high performance computer, it's actually starting to saturate. And the reason why is it's a victim of its own success. So it can do, if Tony were the only computer user on Earth of the San Diego Supercomputing Center, Flash Gordon computer, which is all based on flash memory and so forth, so it's super fast when it came out.
Right.
But then it would be exponentially, it would continue this growth in flops and floating point instructions per second. However, there's more than one Tony. And so the more successful this product is, the more exponentially larger numbers of people want to use it. And then you have taxation, you have overhead, you have throughput constraints and bottlenecks.
Economics.
It's the economics of scale. And for me to think that, yes, it's just this simple binary node tree that just grows off forever. So, he recognizes that. I was impressed that he's not really, promoting things that are more prone to hype, say with like quantum computing, quantum supremacy, and stuff like that. That really isn't in his book. We did talk about distribution, which to me is almost like the opposite. You look at the word decimate, right? Where did that come from? It was like 1 in 10 people would be killed in some Roman army or something. So it would be reduced by a factor of 10. That's kind of the opposite of, that's like exponential decay. So every period you lose 10% of the population. In this case, he's talking about decimating, say, transportation. The book starts off with an Uber helicopter, basically, that'll pick you up, a drone that will fly you around the city. And, on the day that we did the podcast, I think it was in like early March, like Uber reached its lowest stock price ever. And I was thinking, like, how is this really possible? But then a month later, it's back to where it was, and the company's in good shape. And maybe it suppressed some of its competition because Lyft and other companies might go by the wayside. So he uses these paradigmatic examples, virtual reality, wearables, like sensors that are becoming more and more distributed. I would say I agree about half of what he's saying. And I guess given the scaling of some of the predictions he's making, it does lead to a pretty bold and abundant future, to use the title of his previous 2 books.
Yeah, okay. But almost none of this, in my opinion, takes into account the human nature. Because there are plenty of examples where we should by now already have enjoyed the exponential growth of so many things. I'm thinking internet bandwidth is one of them, right? We should all have gigabit speeds and more, all of us, everywhere, and yet we don't, because of purely economic, corporate, and human nature reasons that have depressed all of this exponential growth. And none of it seems to take any of this into consideration. What we can do and what we will do are 2 entirely and completely different issues. And these thinkers tend to, in my experience, only look at what we can do and not really focus on what will end up happening. And I know that's way more complicated. And it is nice and it's easy to stay optimistic that way. When you think about what we can do, you can ignore all the crappy news about, well, it won't actually happen because, right? Should have been on the moon consistently for 50 years, yet we're not, right? So a lot of that stuff. What we can and what we do is 2 different things.
Yeah, I mean, he sometimes invokes these quotes by Einstein, and other people have brought this up too. You know, this quote that two things are infinite: the universe and human stupidity.
And I'm not so sure about
the universe. And you see that, like I had, there's a woman who wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post. I'll try to link to it. In context of the, of what's happening in society with Black Lives Matter and racism and all these conversations that are taking place. And she was saying, like, I wish racism, she's a scientist, she's an oceanographer. And she was saying, like, because of these problems that are happening in society, I can't do the work that's needed for the climate and for oceanography, et cetera. So how is it possible, for me to do my day job when I've got these human factors that come into play? I'll try to find a link to it later. But the bottom line is, you can't separate out. Yeah, you can't separate out the society in which a scientist or technologist or futurist lives and that society and his or her work, because we are both deeply connected to the times in which we live and the society in which we live. But one thing that's nice about the book that Peter and Stephen Kotler have written in this series is that it does paint. So what I always do is look back at his previous books, which predictions came true, which attributes. So certainly I don't think, right now, at least in the case of the COVID pandemic, if you're looking forward, that you'd say, yeah, cities are going to be the place for people to live in the future. They have much lower overhead in terms of, housing costs, transportation costs, but they're also open you up to new potential pathogen vectors and concentration, et cetera. So yes, they may be better energetically, although there's some controversy about that too. However, if I look at education, you and I have had this conversation in the context of Mario Livio. When I talked about it with him, with Peter, I said, who would you rather have? Me teaching you an inclined plane with a ball rolling down it, or Galileo himself by putting on a VR headset and augmented reality? And he's very, very positive about that. He thinks the days of my job are numbered, that they really won't have the opportunity for the traditional sage on a stage I mentioned. That's going to go away, according to him. Now, I pushed him back. I said, I have this virtual reality headset, Tony. I've used it 6 times. My kids will use it, and I've had it for 2 years now. And now you can get it for like $80, and it's great. There's nothing wrong with it. But, to wear this giant headset around and then putting in earphones and then like not being disturbed for 3 hours, maybe that'll work. But then I look, well, what's the difference? Right now at UCSD, we're having virtual labs. Can you imagine that? Here's a virtual chemistry lab. Take out your sodium hydroxysulfate and mix it. I mean, it's just insane. But the other classes are online, and now kids are asking for tuition refunds for in-person schools. And I can't disagree with him. I think there's ripe for disruption in the educational world, and that's one of his predictions. It's going to be completely disrupted by technology such as 5G, which we can get into.
I think that's a good. I think that's a good prediction too, because maybe not because of technology, but because out of sheer necessity. It is not an efficient way, I think, the way that we're teaching right now. And with all due respect to what you're doing, which is, I think, great in the classroom, it's important. I think your time could be best spent as a professor, working with your students in a different way. Besides just standing at a chalkboard and spewing out information, you can engage them in much different ways now. They could watch the video, get the content, but you're there to teach them what it means, to teach them how to interact with that content, and to do things with it to help enhance their critical thinking. That, to me, should be where jobs like yourselves should be heading, is this more. It just uses your time better and your expertise and skill better. Because a lecture, universities have known for decades that anybody can do it because they hire, adjunct professors, or they hire lecturers to do it, right? Yeah. And that's all they do. They just present the material. So good. All right. Well, I want to talk a little bit about this idea of space travel and putting our bodies into digital things. And not digital things, but mechanical things that have digital components in them. Do you think that's where we're heading? Kurzweil does, and does Peter think that too?
I think, well, he's working obviously very hard. Space X Prize was one of the first, human commercial space ventures that really propelled that literally and figuratively into, suborbital flight back, about 10, 15 years ago now. And the thing that's brilliant about what Peter does is he knows that, what they used to say about NASA, no bucks, no Buck Rogers. And so there's actually a hedge fund, a venture capital fund that is affiliated and allied with the X Prize, and it's called the X Prize Foundation, and they work to raise money for these prizes. So, fun fact that he shared with me: the letter X stood originally in X Prize as a placeholder for the eventual foundation that would come in and give them money to support the X Prizes. So, and it'd be the Gordon Moore Prize or whatever, or the Bill Gates Prize. But instead, he basically did it himself through venture capital funding. And I urge people to go and take a look at his website and so forth. So, I think as far as where things might be going with his space ventures, I think, he's done a few things with it. So far, it's been space tourism, very limited and very expensive for the first people that were on it. The first missions, Anousheh Ansari being a famous one. She was the first female space tourist, and she's on the board of the X Prize Foundation. If not, maybe the leader right now, I'm not sure. And so they're working to make that more what he calls democratized. But I think the pace, is sort of beginning to pick up. I mean, last weekend we saw this wonderful launch of 2 crew members for the first time to space, and then the return of the rocket. I love that, back to Earth. So I think, maybe that is in some way, co-inspired by what Peter has done. I don't know necessarily if that's his top priority right now. I think he spends a lot of time focusing on that all-important ingredient, which is, financing these vast projects.
Yeah, that's really true. It's finances are huge, the huge obstacle for all this stuff. And so, okay, well, listen, we're up at the end of our time together. So let me just look at some of the chat here. Do you have some chat on your channel that you want to respond to? By the way, welcome everybody. I've been watching your chats, even though I haven't publicly acknowledged you. Andrew Planet, Galaxia is back. I haven't seen you in a while. It's good to see you back. And of course, Peter Q and Susan Hunter, Gregorius, all you guys. It's good to have you back. So I'll read some of your comments and questions, but let me just give Brian a chance first. Do you have something on your channel you want to respond to? By the way, we are streaming to his channel too.
Right. Yes. Let's see. I don't see too much any comments or questions here. Let me see. No, I don't see any questions on my channel, but let's go to yours.
Okay, so a couple of comments. David Crane comments, a pandemic spreads exponentially when the reproduction rate is over 1. If you keep R well above 1 for a while, then you will see the virus spread in the way Brian describes. That's right. But we haven't, I don't think, well, maybe in spots it's gotten that high. Simon Farmer, I've always been skeptical of Ray Kurzweil, but recent advancements in machine deep learning that show capability increases with scaling of computing is swinging me back into his view.
One thing about Ray, I have to say, is he's also gotten a little bit controversial in some ways. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but one thing, because he wants to live to see the singularity, he's established a package of supplements, of vitamins and minerals that you can buy called Transcend. I'll link to it. I'm not affiliated with it. I just think people are interested in this, and I should at least put it there so people can make their own judgments about it. I'll put it in the chat. Some people are just tickled by it. Look, I'm not averse to people if it's not doing harm. People take vitamins for other reasons and take other supplements for other reasons.
I have a problem with it if it's dishonest, if it's disingenuous.
If it is,
I have a huge problem with it.
So look at the website. Yeah, let me know if you think it's if it's dishonest or not. I put the website again. I don't have any affiliation with it. I do take vitamins, but not his at all.
Yeah. Here's what I think. I think that a couple things are converging here. We want to go into space. Space is extremely dangerous, and it is very inhospitable to human beings. And so that's one thing. Another thing is we are finely tuned to being here on Earth. Extremely finely tuned to being here. Even going in the atmosphere just a few hundred miles away really messes us up biologically. and then going to the moon, get us out of the magnetosphere. All this stuff is our biology betrays us, and I don't think we can survive space. So I think the only real practical way to get there is to hope Ray and Peter et al. Are reasonably close, and that we can somehow inject our bodies into a thing that can survive space. But that opens up a whole bunch of philosophical questions for me. But let's say that's possible, then I think space travel actually becomes something we can talk about. I am far from convinced we can survive in space.
Because you look at all the projects they're involved in. Human longevity is a part of it. And I think, I just put a link to some of their the first thing you see is, a COVID X Prize, basically, how using big data, high throughput computing can help things. They've also done the Ocean X Prize through the same scientist whose op-ed I posted earlier from the Washington Post about how racism is impeding her work on climate change. She's involved with a company that did participate, or maybe won part of an X Prize a few years ago in the ocean sciences. So, and I think personally, there's more opportunities for life underwater, if we're looking for things. But of course, it doesn't get much more as much attention as going to Mars and colonizing Enceladus and so forth. So I tend to agree with you. It's a lot of it's kind of escapist, wishful thinking. But I also started to wonder. And I started talking to Peter, let's say you cure all these things and we have this lifespan that's a healthy lifespan, which they call a health span, and it goes out to 180 or 200. First of all, how democratic will that be? Will it only be for the richest people? And let's say it is for the richest people, or people that can afford to do it or sacrifice their time or whatever. Nothing wrong with that. The first first plasma TVs cost $20,000, and now you can't even buy one because they've been superseded by better technology. However, what will that do to the people that have nothing else to lose? In other words, if you can't die because your genes have been perfected, your telomeres have been trimmed and coiffed and whatever, I don't know what they're going to do. I'm not a biologist, but then you're going to live in fear. I think, like, you could be killed, or you could, die in a car crash. What will that do to our human psyche? So I think that the technology is actually outpacing by far how it will impact us as human beings. And that's something you touched on earlier.
Yep.
And I think you can go blissfully into technology space, as I always do with my colleagues. And then this week, just to be honest with all the listeners, we were really grappling with this awful situation that's going on in society. We didn't get much work done on the Simons Observatory in terms of, researching the cosmos, because we had more pressing concerns on how to deal with this awful situation on Earth. And what are we going to do? We're just cosmologists. The answer is we can do a lot in our own community, in the community of cosmology. And so I'm proud to say we're starting fellowships in partnership with the National Society of Black Physicists. And we're working to give internships to be a partner with this august institution, which I'm proud to say I'm a member of. And this week's podcast that I just launched today, I had two this week. One was about the founding of Instagram, kind of like the social network, but for Instagram. It's a fascinating story by Sarah Fryer. Had her on Monday. And then today I released an interview with one of my best friends in the whole world, Professor Stefan Alexander, who's the president of the National Society of Black Physicists. I'm going to give away his book. So please, tune into that interview, subscribe to show notes, and so forth. Any other questions that we can get to? I've got 5 more minutes.
Okay. Andrew Planet is asking, isn't AI already here with us humans? We are the first AI.
Yeah, I think Peter, I asked him about that. How do you see AI advancing? What kinds of things will advance is the next step? And I think he thinks it's things like these, listening devices, and it'll be like a doctor and because remember, he's a physician. So your view of a phizician, typically when you go to the doctors nowadays, is some person that's doing this. It's just like typing, never looks at you, But imagine if in your doctor's office there's a virtual smart assistant. I won't say the name of mine because she's listening as I speak and as I type, and I don't want to upset her. But she could be listening in the doctor's office on scanning through. Oh, he mentioned he's got a problem with his left, gluteus maximus, and that correlates in 97% of people who are his age, weight, genetic type, DNA, whatever. That correlates to a severe lack of exercise, or I don't know, whatever it'll be. But that AI will be integrated. Everything will be integrated. All of your data, your sensors, your phone, your voice patterns, your stress, anxiety, that's the direction that AI can help in the immediate sense, but it needs to improve, and it needs to be massively made more available to increase the sample size from just the very fortunate few that are involved in it now. I joke with him, I have this Oura ring. I don't know if you ever heard of these Oura rings. These are like sleep trackers. I got this thing, it's like freaking $200 or something. And he's like, yeah, it's really expensive. I said, did you get this one? Did you get the one that I'm wearing? It's a clear one, stealth. He's like, no, I was like, no, I'm joking. I don't I couldn't resist.
Oh, that's great. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know this. I'll leave you with Andrew's question, then you can head out.
Yeah.
What about digitizing genomes? Then take them on board a spaceship, and when you get to a world where life could physically exist, transfer the digital genome into a biological one, as in artificial wombs. Wow, Andrew, there's a lot there.
Yeah, I guess, that is sort of what we've been doing as a species, except it's been transported in time and not space. I guess the question is, when does that actually come to fruition in terms of distributing throughout the cosmos? I'll tell you what, tomorrow I'm talking with Anne Drurian on the podcast. She's Carl Sagan's widow and also the creator of the Cosmos Possible World series. I can ask her about that. And maybe you and I, Tony, will talk about in the future that conversation that we have. We have about 20 episodes that we need to talk about, including one that I did last week that didn't get much attention because I just released on a Friday with a good friend of mine, a professor from the University of Chicago, about the so-called detection of a parallel universe.
Yeah, that
from
story.
Strange particles in Antarctica. So look that one up.
That would
interested in a real scientist, who's working at the boundaries of human imagination. Yeah, so Abby Vireg is her name, and so check out that interview. I'll put a link right now.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, cool. So we will. That particular story I thought got ridiculous fast. So I would like to hear what she has to say for sure. Okay. Well, I guess I will let you go. Dr. Brian Keating, are you there? Yeah, are you cutting out? You're starting to cut out. I don't know. It doesn't look like it's me. Are you having ISP issues? Okay.
Tony, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. We can still see you, but you're cutting out and becoming quite digitized. So I guess we'll let you go. Go ahead and disconnect, and we will talk to you next. Well, next week I do actually have a hangout. So it'll have to be in 2 weeks from next week. So what is it? June 18th.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me? You're cutting out.
No.
Yeah.
All right.
Sorry. So yeah, I'll connect with you on email. Okay. All right.
All right.
Take it easy. Thanks, Brian. All right. Yeah, there was an issue there with your sound. I couldn't hear you. Okay. Well, okay, everybody. It's just me. I'm gonna hang out for about 15-20 minutes with you guys, and we'll call the end of this. Let me go ahead and just disconnect. There we go. That way he doesn't have to worry about it. So how's everybody doing? What's this event happening tomorrow? I don't know. Don't know. Hey, Adam, it's good to see you. James Dugan, good to see you guys too. How's everything out in Australia? You guys having a good day out there tomorrow? All right. Do I prefer Twitch or Discord? Susan's asking. I must remove some apps. Well, I mean, they're two different things, Susan. I use Discord for just chatting with people via text, and I use Twitch to do streams on. I'm doing most of my streaming on Twitch now. This is the only thing I'm still doing on YouTube. on Thursdays. And for anybody who saw the experience with NASA last week during the SpaceX launch, can understand where I'm coming from. Turns out NASA had their own stream blocked for the SpaceX launch because it was the copyright credit was given to Nat Geo, which I thought was hilarious because I've been living that life since 2016. So anyway, YouTube and I are not having a good relationship, and I spend as little time here as I can. So I'm sorry to say, Susan, if you want to delete an app and you want to watch streams, then delete Discord. If you don't care so much about watching streams, then delete Twitch. But you don't need to use, unless you do everything on a mobile, you can just use it all on Chrome or Firefox too. You don't need to install the app for it. You can still use these services. Well, maybe not Discord, but Twitch you can. So that would be my advice. Galaxia, yes, March 25th July, March 2020, launching from KSC, but can't go because of COVID. Yes, but you know what? Let's do a stream together. I'm a little apprehensive about doing some launch streams when people are involved because, there's not a whole lot of astronomy there. But, the Mars 2020 rover is science related. So I think I have a lot to say about that. So why don't we do a stream on that together, and we'll watch that launch together if it's not like in the middle of the night or something. I have to look and see what time it is. But yes, July 25th from KSC. I won't go because of the same reason, Galaxia. I'm not going to head out there to watch any live launches for now. Oh, good, James. I'm glad things are going well down under. Yeah, Hans. Tomorrow's the old birthday. I tend not to. I try to ignore that as much as I possibly can, but yeah. Larry Keys was kind enough to notice that there's some gray seeping into my goatee, like he's only just now noticing. Where have you been for the last few years, man? So yeah. Yeah, he put that comment on Discord. So Larry's like, "Oh, Tony, you got a little bit of gray going there." Well, yeah. I forget how old you are, Larry, but I think you've got a couple years on me yet. But yeah. Simon Farmer, how surprised will I be the first time you see someone deep faking you? The tech is coming fast. I don't think I'm not anywhere near worth deep faking. They're going to be doing presidents and actors and actresses and stuff like that, and other political people, not me. But if it happened, I would be completely freaked out. I mean, anybody would, right? Seeing these deep fakes of not you saying things you didn't say, that would be incredibly, I don't know, I feel kind of violated in a way. It's like, you don't even own your own thoughts anymore because people take those from you and your own image. 9 a.m. is the launch. What is that? Eastern time? Is that my time, Galaxia? Because that's fine. Let's see. Asteroid Day have been live streaming on Twitch and YouTube, but they have an event on June 30th. Cool. At least you still got a full head of hair. Woo! Thank you, John. Okay, we're good. Let's switch the subject here. I hope Brian turned this stream off of his channel because he's like, "What? This is not content I asked for." So, okay, tonight, if you guys are interested, I'm going to be back on. So, I should point out, I just want to do a little plugging here. Even though, YouTube and I are getting on each other's nerves, I haven't stopped making content so much. I mean, I am still creating videos, but mostly I'm into live streaming right now. And on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night, I stream on Twitch on the Gibson Picks channel at 9 o'clock Eastern time every evening from 11 o'clock on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Tonight, on Tuesday, we talk about philosophy of astronomy, and we had a great discussion, I felt, about, I posed this moral dilemma about generation ships going to the stars So, I proposed very quickly. I proposed the following. You have a generator. It takes, Proxima Centauri b is 4.5 light years away. Let's say we could get there in 3 generations. That would be some fraction of the speed of light, like 3%, something like that. And so let's just say, for the sake of argument, it takes us 3 generations to get there. The first generation signs up, knows very well what it's getting itself into, and says, "Yeah, man, let's go to Proxima Centauri b. I'm all about that." And they sign up, they get on the generation ship and go, with the understanding that they must, capital MUST, procreate, because otherwise the generation ship doesn't work, idea doesn't work. So they've got to produce the next generation. And if you're generation 2, then you didn't ask for this. First of all, you're put in this situation where you're born in a generation ship, and you are compelled to also have further progeny that will keep the generation ship alive, and nor will you be able to enjoy the fruit of the labors, the overall mission. And the question was, are we morally justified as a parents of generation 1 to give generation 2 this situation? And if you were generation 2, how would you feel? And we talked about that a lot. And so those are the kinds of things we discussed on that Tuesday. We also talked about the idea of putting our human bodies into a digital thing. What does that do to our sense of who we are? We talked a little bit about what are we? If we're suddenly a digital thing, are we still the same thing as we were before? And what does it mean when we define ourselves? So we talked about that a little bit. And on Wednesdays, we do exolife and exoplanets and exo everything about life and the universe. And last night I had Econ Greg, and we talked for 2 hours about life in the universe. And we listened to Econ Greg go through his thinking on his rationale for why he also does not think it's possible that there are very many other alien civilizations out there. So this club is growing. I used to feel all alone that, I was one of the only people who thought that we could actually be the only civilization, not only in the galaxy, but in the universe. And he, by reasoning out the process in his head, came to the same conclusion. And it was an interesting conversation. And on Thursdays, what I do tonight is I do a weekly space roundup. I tried to do it here on YouTube and got fed up with it just because the commenters sucked. And I had to spend a lot of time deleting comments, and I just don't want to do that anymore. So I'm not doing it on YouTube anymore. So I do it on Thursdays on Twitch, and so the community there is very welcoming and open. During the live stream, everybody's great. It's what happens to the VOD where all the trolls come out, and I'm very tempted, if I stream on YouTube anymore, to just make it private and nobody can watch the VOD. I'm tempted to do that. So anyway, that's a good story, Susan. Driving home from work one night, a car full of men pulled up beside me, and I got a big full moon. I suggest anyone who hasn't looked at deepfakes recently to take a look at the 2-minute papers called Everybody Can Make Deepfakes Now. Yes, I've heard that it's gotten pretty simple to do. So Gregorius is like, maybe we can do a virtual star party for the International Observe the Moon Night 2020. What day is that? What day is International Observe the Moon Night? I should look that up. I should probably know that, but I don't. So let's see. Yeah, the Red Dwarf books are very good. The in-between generation, that's a long and deep question. Yeah, exactly. Well, we did have a conversation about that, Peter. Unfortunately, it was too late for you. But you can still watch the VOD. You can still watch the VOD on Twitch. I think it stays on there. The name of the channel is Gibson Picks. It's also part of a thing that Dustin and I are doing together called Clear Skies Network, which we're trying to build together. This space that you can go to always have something related to astronomy and space going on. Dustin does virtual observing. I do science and philosophy discussions. And another person, Bill Nash, does a lot of technical issues with regard to amateur astronomy. So those are the 3 of us right now that are doing it. What is a VOD? Okay, so Larry Keese doesn't know what a VOD is. Why don't one of you tell him what a VOD is? So that he will know. I'm not seeing any chats. Are you guys there? All right, I'll just tell you. Larry, it stands for Video on Demand, and it's what happens after the stream is over. So, for example, when I sign off here, the recording will be left behind on YouTube for anybody to watch after the fact. And these are. It's like when you watch a sports game on TV, a football game or whatever it is, and the football game is over, but you can still watch a recording of it on ESPN or BBC or wherever it is they put it to watch later. That's a VOD. That's called Video on Demand. So that is it. Let's see. When will the EHT release the image of the black hole SAG A star in the center? That's a good question, Big New Games. I don't know. I haven't heard much from them. They were doing some processing, and I think this is a non-trivial thing. We're talking terabytes of data that they have to go through, and so this is taking a lot of time in computational space. So it's taking a long time to go through that data, and then when they do process it, they want to make sure it's right. And the M87 image that they released last year, or was it year before, took a long time, but it was a less amount of data, so they were able to do it reasonably confidently. We currently have 2 moons, if you want to count. 2020 CD3. I don't. Because it's not really a moon, I don't think. If we were to have a Fermi paradox debate, it would be me versus Tony, Isaac Arthur, John Michael Goudier, Fraser Cain, Dr. Kipping, and many others. Oh man, those I don't even put me on that list. I would be so. Those guys are way above me in ability to talk about this stuff. But thanks for doing it, Simon. I do appreciate it. But not for me. I can't be in that. These guys knew way more than I do. Did you get Floaty McBoatface seaworthy? I did. Floaty McBoaty is ready to go. And I spent a good part of the weekend working on it. So thank you, Peter. It's all there. What do I think the EHT will discover? I think it'll show us the event horizon, which is what it was designed to do. I think it'll show us the black hole itself, the edges of the event horizon, which will be amazing. So I think that's what's going to show it. If this was Twitch, I'd say PogJam. All right, guys, I got to go. I got 5 minutes. I guess I got to hang out. I got to go at 4, though. Pretty good. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Susan. Yes, I still need to get a camera. This one is it hasn't overheated in a while, though, so maybe I don't. But it was definitely going to blink there for a while. But thank you, Susan. I do appreciate it. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, you don't agree, do you, Simon? You don't think? Do we all agree? Does Isaac Arthur and all those guys? Are we all in the same camp, or do we all have the same opinion? Because if that's true, I thought I was in the minority about that. So I'd recommend you to SETI for one of their events a couple of months ago. Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. We are under. Can you think of a single popular science streamer that keeps up the idea that we are very likely not alone in the galaxy? Really? So I didn't know this, Simon. Is this something most streamers now, our science communicators, are now saying? I did not know that. Well, I thought I was in the minority. Well, good. I guess I feel vindicated. I'd love to be a contrarian and jump ship and argue the other side, but I can't in all good conscience do that because the arguments aren't very good. But maybe I could try. I could try to be on your side, Simon, and say, life is everywhere. Civilizations are all over the place. And the reason we haven't seen them is because they don't want to be seen, and we aren't smart enough to look at them, and they don't want us to know they're there because they have a prime directive, and also they're very shy. This is why we haven't seen them. Should their presence be blasted all over the galaxy? Sure, it sure should be. Why haven't we seen it? Well, we've only been looking for about a few hundred years, let's say. Let's give it a real big benefit here. So we just haven't had enough time to detect anything because we've only been looking for 100 years. Set aside the fact that the galaxy is almost as old as the universe, and there should be signals everywhere floating all over. We should be saturated in signals and don't have to wait for them to get here. They should already be here. Never mind. We won't think about that. You see what I mean? I mean, the arguments are not great for life being everywhere. Civilizations especially. Everybody, I think, agrees that, non-intelligent life is probably everywhere, or at least very, very common, more likely than not to occur on any given exoplanet. I think most people would agree with that. I do. I think it's probably true. But what I cannot get on board is the nature of intelligence arising from that relatively simple life. I have a real problem with that happening. Think about the luck that was involved in us getting here. For hundreds of millions of years, the planets were dominated by giant, huge animals that had no brain. And they got wiped out. Big luck there on our part, right? Which allowed us to maybe eventually get some evolution going and gain some intelligence. But even that was not, this was a dangerous place for mammals. We came from little shrews and all that, and up from that, up pop us. That was incredibly lucky. So, I mean, just think about that, how unlikely we are here. And the fact that we are here is incredibly remarkable. I mean, when you think about it that way, it's hard to imagine that there's just civilizations coming out our whatevers, So I'm trying to keep the stream nice. So we ain't looking for the right signals. Always okay. So we're not looking in the right signals. We don't have the right technology. Okay. Alien tech is probably different to ours. Okay. Yes, Peter. Very much so. The reason we haven't seen them is because we haven't looked yet. Our telescope capabilities better than most. Yes, that's right. But I'm going to parrot something that Econ Greg said last night, which really helps, and I'm going to have to sign off. It really puts in perspective this idea that there probably isn't a universe full of intelligent civilizations. Our universe is 13 billion years old, roughly. You have to basically knock away the first 2 or 3 billion years because there was only hydrogen and helium, and the stars that were out there were metal poor, or metal. Which way does metallicity go? Anyway, there was mostly hydrogen and helium, and not a lot to build life from. So we had to wait for all these stars to live, explode, create other elements, reform, explode. So several billion years of the universe has to be wiped out. Probably wasn't any life early in the universe, just because there wasn't any stuff to make life out of. So now you've got roughly, let's say, 5 or 6 billion years, 7 billion years for life to form. Okay, now we know on Earth that life pretty much formed right away after Earth formed. So it can once you have the building blocks, the ooze, right, the primordial goo, once you've got all that, life probably comes up out of it, out of a series of more complex organic chemistry. But let's back up a minute. Let's look at this is the way Econ Greg put it. Let's put it in the God's eye view for a second and know that the universe is probably on the way to a heat death, which is some on order of 10 to the 100 and whatever huge amounts of trillions and quadbazillions of years from now, right? And here we are in about a 13 billion year time frame, just starting out. When looked at the huge overall picture of the universe, we're really at the beginning of it, right? If you consider that the lifespan of our universe is going to encompass a heat death with the evaporations of galaxies and stars and black holes and neutron star, all this stuff eventually decaying away, we are really at the beginning of all this. So it's possible, if you look at it this way, that we're just starting and we are among the first civilizations to arise in the universe. If you look at it that way, that is an interesting, I think, take on it. I don't know that it's the right way to look at it, because I don't think you want to go, you can't use the heat death time scale to fully justify this. I mean, there's problems with this thinking, but you can see how, the point being, though, that on time scales of the universe, it's entirely reasonable to say that we've just started, and that this is a natural progression for life to be at about 13 years into it. It's very possible we are among the first. Maybe not the first. There's probably a whole slew of other civilizations more or less on our level just starting out, in which case you're right. We wouldn't see evidence of a darn thing yet. It's too early. We've all just started out. Now, that's a good way of, I think, visualizing one way why this might happen. What it does also not take into account, which I firmly do, is human nature and the likelihood of our surviving ourselves. I give it at worse than 50-50 chance of us getting past our own human nature. We do not have a good track record at self survival. We've made it, but we also have a lot of setbacks in the course of just looking at modern civilization. So it's entirely possible we're going to wipe ourselves out and never see anything. Carl Sagan's certainly worried about it a lot, and it's a real fear. It's a real concern that we will make it that far. So there's that to think about. So I'll read a couple comments and I'll go. Big New Games. The odds are too great that life on other planets would evolve to be intelligent enough to communicate with us, let alone to travel at the speed of light to get here. It's certainly not easy. I would argue that intelligence on that level is not a trivial thing to get past, and it's probably quite rare. Time for humans to start seeding life throughout the galaxy. Oh boy. Yeah, we do so great with all the things that we do occupy. We can at least say, this is from Joe, that civilizations are reasonably rare enough that even if we're not the first one, any other one at our level is too far away to see any evidence of yet. Okay, sure, I'll give you the reasonably rare. I'll even say exceedingly rare. I would say that. I will give you that much. I will say that life, intelligence, civilization, in that order, quite rare in the English sense of the word quite. So let's see. Simon Farmer, people want to remain scientific until it comes to topics of aliens. Yes, that's right. Suddenly science kind of goes away. Susan says, I agree. Egyptians spoke of others before them. Think of the awesome stone bowls in certain pre-dynastic graves. Hunter-gatherers found ancient artifacts that made them holy. Yes. Yeah, and Andrew, you should feel young. That reasoning is so full of fallacies and wrongness. I know. You talking about the whole heat death thing? I know. I accept there's problems with that thinking, but as a way of visualizing this is the reason I put that out there. I thought it was a good way. Okay, Simon's asking me to take the time to listen to someone that has also spent a lifetime thinking about it and following the science. Question assumptions. Are you talking about yourself, Simon? Because I will listen to you. Would you like to come on a stream and we'll talk about it? I'll be more than happy to listen. And I think you know me well enough to know that I'm not just going to talk over you. I will listen and take in what you're saying. So absolutely, man, let's talk about it. If you're willing to, I'd be happy to listen. I just haven't seen an argument yet that convinces me. Life is also about balance, Hans says. So life evolving on another planet might die before it reaches more complex life forms. Yeah. That's this whole idea of the universe being very dangerous. It's a very dangerous place. Earth was dangerous, is dangerous to us. So I have an involvement with Backyard Worlds. I have been involved with the Zooniverse science team. Yes, that's right. I'd love to. Never done it before. Okay, so here's the thing. Are you on Discord, Simon? The best way to get a hold of me is to just DM me on my server. Get on my server and then look me up and then send me a message saying you want to be on a stream, and I will send you a link on how to when you want, and we'll decide on a time, and then I'll send you a link and you can join. And then if you've got a reasonable mic with a headset and a decent camera, you're all set. Yeah. Worry more about the headset than the camera. You could use your laptop camera, be just fine. So yeah. So try that out, Simon, and we will chat about your view. And Galaxia, you're also welcome. But I've invited you many, many times to be on a stream, and you want to discuss it. By all means, let's do it. You know me. I'm not going to be mean or argumentative. So let's just have a fun discussion, and I'll be happy to do it. Yeah, that's exactly right, Andrew. Could advanced life forget exploration and settle for reality shows? Yes, I think we have, actually, haven't we? Well, okay, Simon, you have no excuse. Galaxia, I extend the offer to you as well. I'd love to have a chance to chat with this, and I will give you guys all of the time to talk and say what your views are. And I will listen, and I will allow myself to be convinced if you've got good enough arguments. So let's do this thing, man. I am up for it. And the time when I would like to do it is next Wednesday on the Twitch stream, but I know that's really late for Galaxia, so I'll be willing to do it in the afternoon if you'd rather do it that way. There are many things to say to them, but let me say this. A fluke cannot exist for 4 billion years. Furthermore, flukes in the universe do not exist by definition. Well, are you saying that things that happen by fluke, do you mean an accident? And these would be, I assume that would be highly unlikely events. So you're saying that flukes, if you mean by flukes that they are highly unlikely events, then is your argument that we do not have highly unlikely events in the universe? I may have that wrong. I just don't know what you mean by fluke. So, like the GRB network, Hercules, Corona, Brown, Great Wall. Yeah, okay. Reality is a cruel mistress. Yes. Okay, guys, I need to go. I really do have to go. I've got to do a meeting here very shortly. So give it some thought, guys. Simon, Galaxia, anybody else who wants to talk about this and take the side of life is everywhere, civilization is everywhere. Let's do this, man. We can do it in a variety of venues. If you've got the nerve, I'll even do it here on YouTube. Just be ready, because the people here I'll just delete the VOD, or I'll make the VOD private. That way we don't have to deal with those nasty comments that come from just random people who stumble on your stuff and don't know who you are. So let's so think about it. Okay, guys, I'm out of here. I will see you guys tonight if you show up on Twitch, twitch.tv/GibsonPicks. Otherwise, I will be back next week on Thursday here on YouTube with the AAS guys. And I think we've got somebody from Blue Origin on the panel. I'm excited. I'd love to learn more about what Blue Origin's doing. I don't totally know the topic yet because they haven't told me. But there is one on June 11th, 3 o'clock Eastern Time, on this BAT channel, on this BAT station, BAT time, all that kind of stuff. So that's it for this week. On behalf of Dr. Brian Keating, I want to thank you all very much for watching. And as always, people were asking about the shirt. you can, I think I saw the link, but if you go to like teespring.com/SFSF shop or something like that, it's on there. One of you guys, Space Fan, made these t-shirts for me, and they are for sale, and you can buy them, and I get like a couple dollars if you buy one. So, yeah, so that's where you can get those. I did have some links on some of my videos, but only when I was wearing the shirt, and it's been so long now, I haven't posted any links to this, so I'll try to remember to do that in the description box. And as always, keep looking up.